Hello, welcome to Vaping 101. My name is Jenna Stein, and I'm a credentialed prevention specialist. This video is going to provide an overview about electronic cigarettes. During this video, I may use the words e-cigs, e-cig, vape, vaping, or the term Juul interchangeably, but for the purpose of this video, they're going to mean the same term. In order to understand electronic cigarettes, we must first remember the harmful effects about traditional cigarettes. I know people of all ages, whether you're 10 or 90, know most of these, but this is an important quick refresher. The CDC says that smoking leads to disease and disability and harms almost every single organ in the body. To name a few, smoking can cause cancer, heart disease, stroke, and several different lung diseases. Please take a look at this picture. You'll notice that it really incorporates every single part of the body. So every single part of the body becomes at risk when you do smoke and can cause damage. What's really in a cigarette? There are several different harmful chemicals that are in a traditional cigarette. Please take a look at the full description shown, but to name the top two is nail polish remover and arsenic, which is found in rat poison. When you think about that, you wouldn't really put those into your body. The crazy thing to think about is there's about 500 different ingredients in a cigarette. When you light that cigarette on fire, they become 7,000 harmful chemicals, and dozens of those chemicals are proven to cause cancer. We're going to now make the connection between the harmful effects of cigarettes into the harmful effects of electronic cigarettes. Take a look at all these different vaping devices. Some of you may have seen some of them, and some of you may never have seen any of these. Try to think of if you do know anything about vape devices. They could come in all different shapes and sizes and may be referred to as an e-cigar or e-pipe as well. They may even resemble a traditional cigarette, but this is still an electronic cigarette, and after use, it could be disposed. Others can be recharged. It's important to note that no matter what they look like, they all contain the same parts on the inside. Every single electronic cigarette contains a battery. So every single one of these, no matter the shape and size, all contain a battery on the inside. They could also be referred to as ENDS, which stands for Electronic Nicotine Delivery System. This is important to note because ENDS could contain different drugs on the inside. We're going to go over this in a few minutes, but for now we're going to focus on the nicotine that could be in every single one of these devices. Several electronic cigarettes are made to look like everyday items, such as a USB or a pen. This is done on purpose. We believe that the electronic cigarette companies made it so that youth can use it and it's easily to conceal, and adults may not even know. One brand in particular that has become very popular among the youth is called Juul. This term has also been referred to as juuling. Another reason why this brand may become so popular is because it contains a high amount of nicotine. One Juul pod, which is about the size of one small pen cap, has the same amount of nicotine as 20 traditional cigarettes, which is almost a whole pack. So one of these Juul pods, again, is equivalent to about 20 cigarettes. Just like we went over what's in a traditional cigarette, we want to know what's in your electronic cigarette. You notice that some of the same harmful chemicals are in this as well. It's important to note that the inside could also be referred to as e-juice. E-juice could also come in several different flavors, such as cotton candy, etc. A lot of these flavors are actually not regulated at all currently by the FDA. Let's go over some of the health risks associated with electronic cigarettes. In doing several of these presentations in the community, I've heard several people say that a little bit after taking their first or even second puff, they begin to feel very nauseous. Vaping directly affects the stomach, causing either vomiting or nausea. It also directly affects your heart and circulation. It increases your blood pressure as well as increases your heart rate. It also affects your mouth and airways. Of course, we have to mention how it directly affects your brain as well. Electronic cigarettes can damage the brain, in particular the prefrontal cortex. We have to remember that the prefrontal cortex is responsible for our decision-making, emotions, and impulse control. When we think about cigarettes, we realize that there's a nicotine addiction. That is not the case for most today. What it is it looks like this. This again is a picture of a Juul pod, and this is of a Juul or USB looking type of device that is an electronic cigarette. You'll notice that there is what's called a skin over it. You could easily go online and design your electronic cigarette to go to any design that you choose. We want to remember that nicotine is one of the most highly addictive drugs. Nicotine in particular really affects any brain that is still developing. When you introduce any substance, whether it's nicotine, alcohol, or other drug, into a brain that's still developing, it alters it. We now know through scientific research that the brain does not stop developing until around the age of 25. If you are unsure whether you may have an addiction to nicotine, these are some symptoms that you should read. Again, remember that nicotine does pose a really high risk for cancer. Another thing, of course, that it affects is your lungs. Remember that electronic cigarettes is fairly new, so studies are now coming out about how it affects the lungs. One phenomenon that we have now been seeing and is called popcorn lung. Take a deep breath in and out. You could feel that breath. For someone who has formed popcorn lung, taking that deep breath may be a little bit harder. One of the things they say is electronic cigarettes, it builds up, one of the reasons it's called popcorn lung, just so you could see, because it forms and it kind of looks like popcorn that is forming all around. There's been several myths that electronic cigarettes do not have any secondhand smoke. This is not true. We now know that electronic cigarettes do cause secondhand smoke. Remember that when cigarettes first came out decades ago, we didn't know all the harmful effects. You were even allowed to smoke inside restaurants, inside a car, and inside of hospitals. Once all the studies came out about the harmful effects of secondhand smoke, laws were put into place. You are now seeing some laws put into place about electronic cigarettes and vape device as well. There's also something called third-hand smoke. Similar to when you spray a aerosol can of, let's say, Lysol or Febreze, you don't really see what you're spraying. If you look closely on the ground right after you spray it, you may see little droplets or it will remain wet just for a short period of time. This also could leave some residue. So just like that, in an electronic cigarette, residue could be left on different surfaces such as couches and tables. So remember what's in a vape cloud, that it still is harmful even though you may not see it after a few seconds, and it does cause secondhand smoke. Another unintended injury is the battery. So remember, all electronic cigarettes contain a battery. Any battery could have the chance of exploding. If you remember, years ago, hoverboards were actually recalled because the battery was exploding. One Samsung phone in particular also had problems. It caused so many problems that airline companies actually banned that particular phone on their flights and in airports. So whenever you have a battery, it has the risk of exploding. So the electronic cigarette, this has happened on people's hands, on people's faces, in people's pockets, in people's book bags. So we want to keep that in mind. As quickly mentioned earlier, several different drugs can actually be found in the ENDS device. One in particular is marijuana. Again, the term marijuana weed or THC oil is used interchangeably for the purposes of this video. We're going to go over that there could be the several different effects of THC oil in the vape device as well. It's important to note that it's hard to tell whether it's nicotine or weed just from smell because the THC oil used is actually odorless. So you have a cloud that may go away quickly and it could be completely odorless. Marijuana THC oil affects the brain and has several harmful effects. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I do want to quickly mention some of the negative effects about using marijuana. It could completely become addictive. It is directly correlated to memory loss. It affects your heart as well as your lungs. It affects your levels of testosterone. It affects your appetite. It decreases your motor responses, and because it affects the brain, also leads to poor decision making. The important thing to remember is that it's never too late to quit. Whether you are using electronic cigarette with nicotine or THC oil or something else that is in it, it's never too late to quit. There are several resources that I'm going to show that you could call or use. One is you could always use 211. So please feel free to call 211. There's also 1-800-QUIT now. You could also go online to tobaccofreeflorida.com. We went over several different harmful effects and things in this video. I would like to just go over 7 main facts to recap and to take away. Number 1, electronic cigarettes contain at least nicotine. Remember that nicotine is a cancer-causing chemical. There's several different chemicals that are found in regular cigarettes that we now know are also found in the electronic cigarette. Number 2, nicotine is especially addictive for teens and can increase anxiety level. In my several presentations, I've heard several say that they have tried an electronic cigarette because of stress. In a few minutes, we will go over that there are many positive ways to help get rid of stress. Drugs, nicotine, or alcohol is not going to help. It does not get rid of stress because it actually increases your anxiety level, because remember how we spoke about how it increases your blood pressure and your heart rate. Number 3, 1 Juul pod, which again is about the size of a small pen cap, contains the same amount of nicotine as 20 cigarettes, which is almost an entire pack of cigarettes. Smoking electronic cigarettes harms your brain. Remember that it's proven now that your brain does not fully stop developing until around the age of 25. So when you introduce the electronic cigarette, it really has a higher chance of becoming addictive. Number 5, electronic cigarettes, especially the Juul, were designed on purpose intentionally to look like everyday items. So if you did see a bunch of USBs laying around, please inquire to see if that really is an electronic cigarette. Remember, the Juul and other electronic cigarettes could be charged in a computer or laptop just like a USB. Number 6, flavored regular cigarettes were banned because it was proven that they got teens addicted, but several electronic cigarette flavoring are still on the market. Number 7, e-cigarette aerosol is not just harmless water vapor. So flavors such as cotton candy and cookies and cream, it's not just that flavor. It does contain nicotine in it. Here's several tips to deal with stress. The most important thing to know is that there's always a counselor that is there to help you. You could reach out by calling 211. I'm going to give you a few moments to read over these. Some may work well for others and for you and not for others. There's also a difference between knowing them but actually practicing them. So I'll give you a few moments just to remember that we actually want to try some of these things when we're having a bad day. Here's some statistics relevant to electronic cigarettes. One in particular that I want to mention is about Broward County. 41% of Broward County high school students said that they have used electronic cigarette. What that means, though, is that about 60% of Broward County high school students have not used an electronic cigarette. Remember, the CDC has declared this a youth epidemic of electronic cigarette use. Some more resources, and because the CDC has declared this an epidemic, we are here to try to help. One thing is that we have a Break the Vape task force. If you follow us on social media, you will see several posts and several resources all about electronic cigarettes. You could also visit our homepage, which has an important electronic cigarette prevention toolkit. So again, here are some of our social media tags to please follow and share. And here are some more resources that you could use. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.